everybody, it's Raghu, and I'm back with Mindrolling, and I'm with Michael Leach today, and we're gonna chat. Michael has a fascinating history that he put into wrote a book about faith over fear. So we were just talking about and referencing Ram Dass and my relationship with him over many decades, and so I wanted to, as soon as I saw the cover, Mike. Well, first of all, welcome, Michael.
Thank you, Raghu. It's a pleasure to be with you.
So, faith over fear. And as soon as I saw the title, I remembered a moment in India,
Mm.
long, long, long time ago, when we were together with Ram Dass, and he somehow came up with a sort of a mantra,
Hmm.
which was faith, no fear. Okay. Faith, no fear.
Is that no KNOW?
No, it's a no.
N-O fear. Okay,
Yeah,
got
yeah.
got
No,
it.
no,
Okay.
yeah, no faith, fear.
Hmm.
Faith, no. Faith, no fear.
Hmm.
No faith, fear.
I love
And
it. I
yeah,
love it.
so, but yeah, you've gone into this, in great depth and using your story to be able to express it. So we got to hear the story. I mean, there's no way around it. So
Yeah.
yeah, even we were just talking about Chicago because of we're in this midst of of Frozen. It's like the movie Frozen.
That's right.
Yeah. So and Michael comes from Chicago. Yeah. So talk about your how you grew up in this particular space and time in
Yeah.
Chicago.
Absolutely. I would say first, thanks so much for reaching out, and I'm grateful for the time. I would say my path, Raghu, I would say, is a series of pivots that look strategic on paper, but felt more like surrender in real life. Grew
Mm.
up on the south side of Chicago, in a faith-centered home. Had a strong affinity for sports. Sports sort of became my first dharma, right? My first discipline, because it taught me service. It taught me team, humility, and that path took me into professional sports, where I worked in the NFL for a little over a decade. First with the Chicago Bears. Speaking of Chicago, as the assistant to head coach. Um, Tough loss in the playoffs. We'll bounce back next year, hopefully.
I'm a
Uh, and-
Giants fan, so
oh, okay. Sorry to hear
we've
that.
been miserable forever. So um,
Yeah. So sorry to hear that. But you served as the head coach's assistant for a few years there, and Lovey Smith and then Mark Trestman.
mm,
And it really widened my aperture. Anytime you're assisting a forward-facing figure like an NFL head coach, your aperture widens, and my aspirations grew. And so in 2014, left Chicago to the Big Apple in New York City. I wanted to be NFL commissioner or an NFL team president, and joined the NFL headquarters
mm,
managing labor relations, and did that for about 5.5 years or so. And later, journey took me into national politics. I worked on a presidential campaign. Had never done that a day in my life. I often say I left a good idea for a God idea, which we can talk about later. And that pivot is what ultimately led me to serve in the White House as the first ever chief diversity officer.
mm.
But the deeper story, I would say, Raghu, isn't the rooms, right? It had been the inner work. I think each step really forced the same question: am I going to let fear lead, or am I going to practice trust? And the book came from living that question over and over, not as a concept, but really as a daily decision. And it's led me here, speaking with you.
Mm. That's
Yeah.
amazing. Yeah, and oh, by the way, you said you got into sports when you were a kid in Chicago and all that.
Hmm.
So did I. This is really funny. I did a podcast with a psychiatrist named Gabor Mate, who's
Mm.
very famous and works with people in addiction and grief, and he's
Mm.
amazing. So in the middle of this thing, so he was talking about, okay, like, what do you do with the realities of whatever it is that you
Mm,
were consumed by. How did you react to that when you were a child? Okay, so he said, like,
yeah.
I got a free psychoanalysis on a podcast. So I just recalled that one of the ways that I escaped some abuse,
Hmm.
um, which was not physical, but it was mental.
Yeah.
One of the my father was a World War II bomber pilot and had PTSD like really bad, and he was
Mm.
angry, and he just so the abuse came from there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nobody knew about some of the great psychedelics now that can help with psilocybin and so on. No one knew
Hmm.
about that. Well, people knew about it back then, but it wasn't like it is today, being really discussed, and it's a bit
Yeah.
of a revolution about how that can really help people, especially veterans
Hmm.
coming back with PTSD. So the way that I soothed, he said, how did you soothe yourself from this terror? Football. Football became everything. Like I mean, I wasn't playing. I didn't go to, like in the States, too small to even think about going to a university or any of that and doing that. But it just
Same.
in but flag football, which is going to be
Yeah.
part of the Super Bowl, I think this year or some
Yeah.
crazy thing.
Pro Bowl. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, the
Yeah.
Pro Bowl. Yeah. So
Hmm.
um, that is what I took on to be able to live through that very tough moment. One major thing. The other thing for me was music. And God, you were in the middle of all that in Chicago, right? I mean,
Hmm.
incredible.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyhow, yeah, it's what we do to be able to live with what we have in front of
Hmm.
us. In India, they call, what karma we're having to live through to
Yeah.
transform ourselves. And yeah, talk about, like you talk
Yeah.
about in faith over fear, and we just thought, yeah, faith, no fear,
Hmm.
faith, no fear,
Yeah. Yeah.
and you talk about it as a gap that needs to be closed. Maybe right in the very very beginning. I mean, that caught my eye of the book.
Yeah. Yeah. I often say, we all have these dreams, right, in life. You got a dream house, a dream spouse, a dream whatever. And there was an adage that was shared with me, speaking of quotes, and it said this, that if you're not careful, you can block your dreams if you allow your fear to grow bigger than your faith, right? I think we all are going to have faith for something, and we're going to have fear of something, and our job is to make sure the faith outweighs the fear. And if it's one revelation that I think came to me just in the process of doing the book and just in living life generally, is that I learned that those two things, right, faith and fear, they both ask you to believe in something that hasn't happened yet,
Mm,
right? But only one moves you forward. And the more clear that became to me, I got to a place where the goal wasn't to eliminate fear. It was to, make sure that I wasn't driven by it, right?
mm,
And I think
good
that
point.
yeah, and so to your point, I think that's kind of like where one of the notions came from. And as I looked through each season of my life, the through line for me was these moments of uncertainty and these moments where I felt a great amount of fear, similar to what you just shared, how you sort of soothed it and got through a season of uncertainty and what choosing faith actually means. I think, faith is an action, just like love. Love is an action, it's not a feeling. And I think the same is true of our faith. And so that's kind of conceptually where it sort of originated for me. And wanted to sort of use my story. That's part one of the book, is really my story to kind of illuminate that, to be a mirror for reflection. And part two is really clarity for your story or the reader or the listener's story, where I
Mm,
offer practical tools and exercises to help give folks not just clarity on how to navigate uncertainty, but some resilience, because it does take a good amount of resilience too.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's a key word. When I think of faith, we've gone into, so we while Ram Dass was alive, he died just 6 years ago.
Hmm.
Uh, and we still do these retreats in Maui, which is kind of a nice place to go.
Nice.
And
I
he
would like
lived
that
there.
invitation.
Yeah,
Keep me in
okay,
mind.
you got it. We he lived there, which is why we did it, because he couldn't travel. He had a stroke.
Hmm.
He was in a wheelchair for like 3 years, something
Yeah.
crazy that doctors said, "Hmm, never heard of that before." Someone having a
Mhm.
stroke and almost dying. Anyhow, he he absolutely emblemized living what is in your book. Is somebody who really
Mm.
uh, he really surrendered. He really let go. And what I first got from him was because so we were talking about faith. Faith is a
Yeah.
huge word, and it
Hmm.
gets some people really nervous. Blind
Yeah.
faith, you're in a cult, whatever, that kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
Um,
exactly
so
right.
where we started discussing it in these retreats, and you mentioned it yourself, is trust. Start
Hmm.
there. Everybody understands that. There's no division about it.
Yeah.
Trust. Everybody has to trust a someone, a something to start the ball rolling. You want to
Yeah.
talk about that in your own experience? Trust.
Yes, for sure. Absolutely. I think it's really a profound way of framing it too. And just, to honor your dear friend, one of the things I do appreciate about Ram Dass is how much of his work centered on presence,
Mm,
right? And the
yeah.
idea that freedom comes when we sort of loosen our grip on ego,
Mm,
fear, and the identities that we often cling to. And I think where my faith intersects with that is this, for me, presence isn't just awareness. You just said a key word, Raghu. You said surrender. It's surrender, right?
mm.
It's choosing to be,
Another tough word,
yes.
for people,
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. In
right?
a major way. It's surrender. It's choosing to be fully present, right? With God, even when outcomes are unclear. And I think to your point, Ramdas, having talked about a lot about releasing attachment to who we think, we're
We
supposed to be.
identity, yeah.
Hmm. Faith over fear explores something similar, but through really a faith-centered lens, and how obedience requires releasing the version of ourselves that's
Mm,
built on control, approval, or certainty. And in both cases, for me personally, I'm a Christian, so, Jesus and God the Father, Holy Spirit, and all of that. The invitation really is the same. It's like, stop letting fear and ego run the room, be here, uh, be honest, and be surrendered, and trust that formation happens not when everything is resolved, but when we stay present through the uncertainty.
mm,
And I'll say it this way. And I started because I used to serve in a church in the different cities I've lived in, and there was one, and it was just an adage I had developed and really leaned into, going back to your word on surrender. And I said that it's really through our surrendering that God does his establishing, and how God is unable to establish anything we don't surrender. And the same is
mm,
true with gift. If your hands are closed and someone or someplace or something is trying to give you a gift, it's going to be really hard to receive that gift if you don't first open your hands. And that's literally the nature of faith. It says,
mm, mm,
I first have to release what's in my hand in order for God to release what's in his hand. And so for me, that's really what resonates a lot with me when you talk about trust, when you talk about surrender, and of course, when you talk about faith.
yeah. When you talk about Christ, so I'll just tell you a little story that you probably
Let's
will
hear it.
appreciate.
Yes,
So I grew
all
up,
ears.
I grew up in Montreal. I'm Canadian,
Okay.
and I'm Jewish. And there was a small enclave of Jews in Montreal,
Hmm.
and I went to school, a parochial school where I learned half in Hebrew. So I
Wow.
was really in that kind of place, right? I
Mm.
rebelled against it all, of course, when I was a teenager. Forget it.
Of course.
Yeah, but so next thing I know, after meeting Ram Dass, I'm in India with this very special being.
Mm-hmm.
His name is Neem Karoli Baba, and he is a Hindu man. I mean, he grew up in a Hindu family near the Taj Mahal, actually.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So, but he was up in the Himalayan foothills.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm thinking, Michael, I'm maybe 23, 4 years old. Okay. I knew from nothing. I don't know. I trusted Ram Dass and went to India.
Mm-hmm.
Figured if he had some great experience that I could. And I was looking for something outside of my religion,
Mm.
basically, because it was too much of good and evil, and that really was a problem.
Mm.
So, and we've all experienced that
Yeah.
in the West. So anyhow, I sit down, and what's the first thing well, the first thing he says, there's only one. In Hindi, it's subject, it's all one.
Mm.
Jesus, Muhammad, Krishna, Buddha. There's
Mm-hmm.
only one thing going on. That was the first thing. Okay. Well, that kind of Unitarian concept is very appealing,
Yeah.
But then, because I had this stuff deep inside me of growing up Jewish in a conservative family,
Mm-hmm.
he says, "Where's your cross?" I go, "My cross?" I didn't say it, but in my mind, I go like, "I'm Jewish." But the way he talked about Christ
Mm.
and the way he integrated it into a vernacular that we could understand in terms of
Mm-hmm.
the unity of all,
Yeah.
I opened up. I surrendered a little bit some of the thoughts and the projections about who I thought I was and what I
Mm-hmm.
was trying to get away from, but it was still really deep inside, because this has happened as a child going
Mm-hmm.
through adulthood. So I did. I went out and got a cross in, in the
Mm.
town in India. And then I won't go too far into it because I want to hear your story, not mine. Uh, I asked him how I should meditate because I figured you get to a guru, that's what you do,
Yeah.
You get a mantra, meditate, whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is what he said to me: meditate like Christ. When he was nailed to the cross, he did not. He was not in pain. He was lost in love with every being
Mm.
on this planet. That went
Mm.
way over my head, but I was in shock.
Mm-hmm.
But then we delved further into it with Ramdas, who wasn't there that moment, but came back and we asked him, about it. What did he really mean, and so on.
Mm.
But this is what I got going to, you're talking about being basically a devotee of Jesus.
Yeah.
This is what I got when I went to India.
Yeah.
Completely different,
Yeah.
completely to me absurd,
Mm-hmm.
that this would happen to me with this Hindu being who was incredible, is incredible, I have to say.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, that concept of the unity of all, that there is only one thing going on, is one of the greatest things we collectively took back from India. So, anyhow,
Mm.
Christ is meaningful to us and to
Yeah.
me.
What a story. Wow. That's a story.
Uh,
It reminds me of the saying, right? When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at will change, right?
yeah,
And I think
I
every
like
time you
that.
hear a new or fresh perspective, it forces you to really lean into this universal truth, and that is whatever in life, whatever you are not changing, you are choosing, right? Whatever mindset, whatever habit you're not changing, you're effectively choosing. Whatever policy is not being changed, is being chosen. And so,
Mm,
what a transformative and
yeah,
formative
yeah,
moment for you. That's
yeah,
pretty.
no,
That's pretty cool. Wow.
absolutely. Hey,
Yeah.
since I am a sports fan, okay, and but Let me hear some inside stuff about the NFL, for God's sake. What was it like going into, and I know it wasn't straightforward, and you went through a
Yeah.
lot of different vicissitudes, which, had you landed you in the White House, which is, we have to hear that story. But yeah, talk about
Mhm.
your interfacing with people and
Yeah.
athletes of
Yeah.
this, incredible quality.
Yeah, absolutely. So, get my first out. I'll start in Chicago, right? And then we'll venture our way to New York City. And so my first exposure to the Bears was through a 4-week internship that I had with them when I was a sophomore in college, in
Oh, really?
undergrad. Yeah, at the
Yeah.
University of Illinois.
Uh-huh.
And so I got a 4-week internship. And, I'm like all the interns, you show a white t-shirt on with the big black letters that says intern on the back. You're just running around that place like a chicken with your head cut off, trying to just meet with as many people as you can and get people to know your name and stuff like
Mm,
that.
mm.
And I was just responsible for setting up different corporate displays and stuff like that. And I often share this story. So I'll share this story with you too, going back to just connection and what my exposure was. I get to the end of this 4-week internship after Vine and trying. And not one person was able to sit down with me of all the people that I had nudged. But the benefit of this internship was that the interns could eat in the same cafeteria as the full-time staff and the players.
Oh,
We
really?
ate on,
Oh.
yeah, we ate on different sides of the room,
Mm.
and the food was free. And so you put free food in front of a kid from the south side of Chicago. Oh, this internship was worth it. And so I'll never
Mm.
forget the last day. And they take care of these multi-million-dollar athletes like nobody's business. You have a station for everything. You have a stir fry station, pasta station, lobster station. I mean, it is
Insane.
unbelievable the spread. And this was on a continuum for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And imagine standing next to the Brian Urlachers of the world or Charles Tillman or, these Hall of Famers getting some chicken strips. It was just mind blowing to me. So I just stuffed myself this last day since I knew I wasn't coming back.
Mm.
I'm walking out of the cafeteria, and as I'm walking out, in comes one of the many people I had asked to sit down with me.
Mm.
And he was full time. It's a gentleman by the name of Andrew. And he says, "Well, I'm free now. Would you like to have a meal?" I said, "He has no idea how much food I just ate." Oh, I said, "Sure." I grabbed another tray, Raghu. I sit down and I have a conversation and we exchange contact information. And fast forward from that dinner, 5 years later, I never worked with this guy directly or anything, just stayed in touch with him and built a relationship with him.
Mm.
That guy is the person who, unbeknownst to me, became close with the head coach, Lovie Smith. And so when Lovie was looking to hire an assistant to head coach, that guy who I just shared a meal with, connected with, and stayed in touch with is the reason Lovey called me and considered me for the role.
Wow.
And so I say that to go back into how it was. Something I learned working in the NFL is that everyone communicates, but few connect.
Mm.
And it was through that connection that I got my first exposure to pro sports. And it was amazing. It's very, very high pressure. You learn about navigating pressure, conflict, consistency, uncertainty at the highest levels. And going on road games was incredible because you're getting on these coach buses that are driving right onto the tarmac to these private chartered planes. You're
Wow.
walking up, everyone has their own road to themselves.
Mm.
You're landing, you're police escorting you to the hotel you're staying at. Hundreds of fans, I don't know how they got our information across all those cities, are waiting in the lobby for us. And the next day, you're walking through the tunnel with 40, 50, sometimes 60,000 fans screaming, get the heck out of here, go back, you don't belong here, you're going to get your butt kicked. And so just so exciting, very surreal.
Mm.
And as my aspirations grew, when I went to the NFL league office, I then had purview not just on one team, but all 32 NFL teams.
Mm.
And really got, a deeper understanding of the business intricacies of that. And that was really eye-opening for me because you learn just like every family, just like every religion, just like every community and country, the cultures are vastly different, even within the same construct that we may see as life. And so the Thai bornness for me, it was eye-opening for me because I read a book by the name of Michael. It was Michael Watkins who did it called I believe it's the first 90 days. And he had a really beautiful definition of the word culture because that gets thrown around so often. What is culture actually, right? And the definition said that culture is just a set of consistent patterns that people follow for
Mm,
the way they do three things: for the way they think, for the way they communicate, and for the way they behave or act, right?
mm,
All grounded in their shared assumptions and beliefs and values. And so that's what being in the NFL showed me was that, it was cool and all of that. But when I got that 32 wide team purview, it really gave me a deeper understanding on culture and how quickly
mm.
things can change when one culture wins on a given day and another culture loses on a given day. And was a beautiful sort of mirror on this reflection in life. Because one of our go-to sayings by coach was, "Did you win the day? Did you win the day?" And he would always ask that question before he left the office. And so,
You
that
win
was,
the day.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah, win the day. We all get the same 24 hours. And so that was
Mm,
a little bit that I'd offer up.
mm. But how
Yeah.
did you get to be an assistant head coach? I mean, you must have been coaching before you did that, no?
No, so the role assistant to head coach, the naming convention sounds like I was coaching,
Oh, I get it.
but
You were his
function,
assistant. Yeah.
yeah, functionally, it's like a chief of staff role, right?
Uh-huh.
You're like his
Right.
right hand, managing
Right.
the calendar essentially the gatekeeper to the head coach and all the media, the players, the communities, the ownership, the executives, running the fiscal year operating budget. It was pretty, intense and
Wow.
on call 24/7. It was quite a bit. Yeah,
Really? Wow.
yeah.
And next, you end up in the White House. I mean, that's extraordinary, right?
Yeah.
You got to tell that story.
Yeah, so the White House, that story, I'll share. And this goes back. I have to give a shout out to my wife, Brittany, who this is in 2016. I was probably in year four at the NFL league office, and she had taken a short leave from her role at NYU to support Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign
Oh,
headquarters. And she
uh-huh.
worked with Hillary's CFO, Gary Gensler, who went on to be the
Yeah.
SEC chairman and everything. And so they lost. Fast forward 3 years later, one of her colleagues from that season of her life reached out to her and said, "Hey, I'm about to be the COO for this presidential campaign." This guy named is Joe Biden, former US vice president, and called her asking if she was interested to come work in leadership on the campaign. Keep in mind, Raghu, I had blinders on. I was so deeply committed to professional sports. If it wasn't in the NFL, I wasn't even going to consider it. My lifelong dream, again, I want to be Roger Goodell, the NFL commissioner, or maybe an NFL team president. And so, to make a long story short, he reaches out to her. She doesn't want to do the role. She had a, tough loss in 2016, if I remember correctly. But he says, okay, I have this other role. It's like a chief HR officer, head of diversity. Do you know anyone? She asked me, did I know anyone? Because I had a deep network of folks who worked in human capital. And it was in that moment when she asked me, instead of my normal response of ignoring it, I felt a nudge from God. And he was just like, listen, learn about this scope. Maybe you can help someone get into this space. And so I take the call with this COO to learn about the scope of the role. I get on the call, Raghu, get to the end of the call. And as I'm thinking about who I can connect for the role, he stops me. And he says, "Well, I'm glad you're thinking about that, but I've been following you on social media through your wife. Um, love what you're about, your ability to connect with people. I'm at Mr. Michael Leach, by the way." He says, "I envision you for the role. What do you think?" I never worked a day in politics, never worked a day in government, and in that moment, I felt a prompting, like really live the voice of God more clearly than I had ever heard him before. And he said, "This is it. This is it." And in those moments when you're faced with when you know you have to make a choice, if you're going to step forward into uncertainty, into the unknown, or shrink back in fear into what you think is safety, that was that moment for me. And so that's kind of how the pivot happened. I said yes. And I didn't take a leave of absence. I resigned from the NFL after more than a decade in it. And it's funny, I resigned on June 19th, 2019, Juneteenth. Oh, pun intended. No, I'm just joking. And I started the next day, Raghu, June 20th, 2019. And we just built it from the ground up. And as we did that, made some history, built the most diverse presidential campaign staff in U.S. history. It wasn't easy, and I talk about this in the book, some of the eye-opening challenges that will shock some people. But by the grace of God, we made it and we won. Think about this, north of 20 candidates, a kid from the south side of Chicago who's never done it before, but trusting that God said if I took the step of faith and left what I thought was my identity, right, he was going to be with me and see me through. And we ended up winning. And not only winning, they ended up creating a first of its kind role in the White House that had never existed before. And so to tie on this story, I say that to offer not just to you, Raghu, because I really appreciate just the space you created. I really feel a synergy here that, um, you know, what good does it profit you to climb the ladder of success in life year after year, only to get to the top and realize the ladder was leaning against the wrong building, right? We see it happen all the time. And so that was that moment for me in that going back to surrender, going back to trust, and what Ram Dass has talked about, what you have talked about. It's what ladder was I really climbing? Was it my purpose or was it my preference? And that's what that pivot and that transition really taught me. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. That's so then suddenly you're in the White House.
Suddenly.
Where were
Yeah.
you in the White House? I
Yeah.
mean,
So
when you went to work, where did you
Mhm.
go to work?
Yeah, so literally on the White House campus. And so just to kind of, if you can imagine this with me, the picture the White House, like the image of the White House that most folks see from the public eye,
Yeah.
that's actually the executive residences. That's where the first family lives. And yeah, they have a couple of offices, spaces in there. But the majority of the White House staff works in the Executive Eisenhower office building, which is right next to that traditional White House image.
Oh
There's
yeah.
West Wing,
Mm.
there's the East
The West
Wing.
Wing. I know
Yeah,
that.
good show.
Yeah, this
West
show.
Wing, the East Wing, and then there's what we used to call it the EEOB, the Executive Eisenhower Office Building that housed the majority of staff. And then the most senior leaders and influencers for the president, the chief of staff and his team, and a host of other divisions were in the West Wing. And so that's where I worked. And going onto that campus every day was very surreal in that, you never dream, Raghu, that you're going to be walking into the White House onto the campus
Mm.
every day for work. And you see these grand, you know, photographs and portraits throughout the
Oh,
building of
yeah.
past presidents and their families and dignitaries. And here I am, just because I said yes to what God told me to do. And it's almost like, getting into the White House. It's imagine rushing because you're about to miss a plane and you have to go through TSA. Oh, and oh, by the way, you don't have TSA pre-check, okay? Or clear, or that TSA, pre-ID thing they have now. It's like going through TSA every day, right? And Secret Service ran that, and then when you get on, you have to wear, everyone has a badge. Everyone doesn't have the same badge. Some badges grants you access to different
Mm.
areas of the campus. And
Yeah.
that's when you start to see the hierarchy of who's who and who has influence and who's supporting. And so it was a historic moment, something I'll never forget. I have a ton of, probably can't see it somewhere over. This is like some of my White House shelving right here.
Oh yeah.
Golf balls to Hershey Kisses that the White House staff would make for us. It was cool. It
Mm.
was pretty cool. And
How long were you there?
3 years. So I again started with the campaign 2019, right? And so I was with Joe Biden for about 5 years, right? So about a year and a half on the campaign,
Mm.
and then was day one on inauguration day, first day. Did it for 3 years. I left January 2024, so a full year before the campaign and before, the transition happened. And yeah, what was interesting too, a lot of folks think, you get into the White House and it's what you see in the movies, but got to remember we were living in very different times. When I started working in the White House, I was working from my house because COVID was still a thing.
Oh yeah, right.
And so everyone was remote.
Right.
And so for the first, I'd say, almost 6.5, 7 months, imagine that with all the security protocols in place and a new role in trying to, foster a culture organizationally that could help advance this agenda. It was incredibly challenging and a first of its kind, not role, but moment for all of us because we were just trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and now, God, you must look back and then go, and we're here now. What happened? I
Yeah.
mean, it's extraordinary, I mean, you don't, but people like you that were part of it prior to what's happened.
Yeah.
It's just, I can't imagine what feelings and
Yeah.
very, very tough, 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 tough for a lot of people. You know,
Yeah. It's yeah, I didn't want to jump in.
no, no,
It's one of
go.
those things where like um it is challenging and there are a lot of people that are um at this sort of inflection point, right? And I think I shared this earlier, like, whatever you're not changing, you're choosing. But I think here's the truth about change, right? It's not, and I'm still sort of learning this myself. It's not secured in a single election or moment of triumph. Like democracy, right, is an ongoing experiment, right?
Mm,
Constantly tested by shifts in power, societal challenges, and the choices we make to uh, protect or erode progress. And leadership, since we're on the topic, I've realized that it's not about ensuring nothing changes after you leave. It's about ensuring that what truly matters can endure when everything does. Right.
mm,
The key is not permanence; it's resilience, and that's why I put that in the subtitle of the book: resilience in the people we empower,
mm,
the principles we uphold, uh, and the ability to adapt when systems falter or are dismantled, because they will be. Disruptions are inevitable in a democracy, and resilience is not about avoiding them; it's about enduring and adapting through them. And
mm.
so that's the price of uncertainty that we all sort of face living in this country.
You know what the Buddhists say? Change and impermanence is the core of what we are
Yeah, that's
about.
good.
You know,
That's good, Raghu.
um,
Yeah, yeah.
so
Got that down.
we don't quote like I said that. The Buddha said that. Okay, I know nothing,
I got
uh,
you.
but it seems to be real. Change and impermanence things
Hmm.
do change very quickly. And resilience is a big part of how do you handle that?
Yeah,
That's how do you relate with the stuff that's coming at us? And now it's like, a billion miles an hour because of
yeah.
digital blah blah and AI. I mean, go on and on and on. I mean,
Hmm.
very,
Yeah,
very powerful forces for sure.
yeah. There's so
Um,
much
so
information. Go for it. Yeah.
Ram, I was going to mention a book Ram Dass we put out. It's the first posthumous book
Hmm.
after he died, and it's called "No, There Is No Other."
There is no other.
Yeah, and the core of it is about us and them and our fixation,
Hmm.
which helps to cause that division. Um, there's a. Let me just read this one quote.
Please.
It's from the Dalai Lama. Disregarding our tendency to see people in terms of us and them, we should recognize that actually they are just like us. All 8 billion of us have to live together helping each other as best we can.
Hmm.
and the this is what this whole book. This is a lot of what you're saying too. I mean, the quote that we use and we sent out a newsletter today is from Ram Dass. Either us makes it or nobody makes it, which
Yeah.
is, and you talk about it too when you
Yeah.
talk about community and the power of us being together. And we have experienced that ourselves over and over and over.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, talk about, this divide is
Yeah.
is really ripping us apart
Yeah. Yeah.
at this point. And it's easy to say, I mean, you got to work on yourself to get to a place where you can be
Right.
open, right?
Right.
To
Yeah.
people who have different views and so on. Talk about that in your experience.
Yeah. Absolutely. I'll say it. I'll start with an adage, and
Mm,
going back to this idea around division and just unity in general. And I often tell folks that distance creates distortion.
mm,
I think the more distant you are from a person, from a place, or from a thing, the more distorted your view will be of that thing. And I think that in many ways has contributed to division. And here's how I think
mm,
about moving from division to unity in real life, not theoretically, right? I think unity doesn't start with agreement, right? It starts with formation. Division, I think happens when fear goes unmanaged and offense goes unexamined. And so something that's practical that has helped me, I'd like to run a little, step test or process, if you will, whatever you want to coin it as, that helps with that. The first is really the fear test. I ask, what am I afraid of losing right now? Right? Status, certainty, control, or belonging. Because the division usually isn't rooted in hatred, it's usually rooted in fear.
mm.
Fear of the unknown,
Absolutely. Yep.
fear of your future being threatened, fear of being misunderstood, and just like you said, fear of the other side. So the first test I run is like the fear test, and I ask that question. The second is the humanity test, right? Have we reduced someone to a position, a label, or a headline, or am I still seeing them as a full human being made in the image of God? And I think unity breaks down the moment people become abstractions, if you will.
Mm,
Uh, Third is the curiosity test, and I think curiosity is a
mm.
big one on that.
Yep.
Am I trying to win? Or am I trying to understand? And I think, curiosity doesn't require agreement, but it does require humility, right?
Mm.
It's you saying there's something here I don't know. When you literally in the
Yeah.
word question is the word quest. You're on a quest for something you don't know. It requires humility. And so the third is the curiosity test, and the last is really the cost test, Raghu. Like unity always costs something.
Mm.
Comfort,
Mm.
speed, certainty, or applause. If it costs nothing, it's probably performative, right?
Mm.
And I think practically unity grows when people can choose presence over posture, um, listening over labeling, and bridge building over tribe defending. And that's not soft work. It's spiritual formation work, when you think about it and get down to the nitty gritty of it.
Mm.
And so, yeah, that's I would
Mm.
offer that up. But again, closing that distance, you know, more times than not has to go with you not just understanding an issue and understanding that the thing exists, um, but really understanding this principle in that understanding may change minds, but it's action that changes lives.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
I think we have a lot of people understanding the issues, but they're not active participants in solving the issue in whichever form they can, from
Mm.
wherever they can. And so that's kind of how I think about it.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, something struck me. I thought I'd share it from the book. The enemy's agenda is destruction. His strategy is division, and his tactic is offense.
Hmm.
Furtick, someone named Pastor Stephen
Yes.
Furtick. I don't,
Yeah.
uh,
Pastor Stephen Furtick.
Verdict. Okay. That
Hmm.
struck me deeply because it captured a spiritual truth that plays out in every aspect of life, relationships, communities, and even nations. It starts small. And this is what really perked me up there when I read this.
Mm.
Someone says or does something that offends us. We stop communicating.
Yeah.
Everybody can relate to that moment when you completely go
Yeah.
into fear, go
Yeah.
into defensiveness,
Yeah.
etc. Right? We build walls instead of bridges,
Hmm.
and before we know it, the divide is so wide that crossing it feels impossible. And I think that's very much of where we are right now. I mean, it's just
Yeah.
daunting, daunting.
Yeah.
And it leads you to say something that we've talked about, which is community. Okay, so yes, this is going on. How do we transform
Hmm.
ourselves and anybody around us that's willing to listen? And community is definitely a
Yeah.
huge, huge thing.
Yeah.
In
Yeah.
yeah, in India they call it two things. Satsang is one word, and
Hmm.
Sangha, the Buddhist, is another word, which is community of fellowship and interest, and we come together in unity. We don't come together in division.
Hmm.
And so that's an important thing because we reflect that. And if we're reflecting more unity than division,
Yeah.
even if we're not there, I'm not there. I mean, you know what
Right.
Ramdas used to do? He
What's
put a,
that?
pi- well, he, uh, well, we have to take what's real. He took Trump's picture,
Hmm.
he put it on his altar where he had all the saints and he'd say, Donald, I'm very sorry for the role that you've taken on in this life. Incarnation, it's called.
Hmm.
I'm sorry about that. But behind all of that, you are a soul like all of us.
Yeah.
And he would speak to that part of Mr. Trump.
Hmm.
And he would talk to me about it, or we'd sit with it, and I go, Ramdas, I can't do it. I cannot put a picture of him and related not to the political thing whatsoever,
Yeah.
just human part of not caring and being, so divisive and so on. And Ramdas said, "Well, you got to try. You got to try. I
Mm.
think we all got to try
Yeah. That's it.
just to take people and not consider them only to be the bad actor in the movie.
Yeah.
Okay, everyone has a soul. I mean,
Right.
and whatever they're missing that's not connected very well, that's
Hmm.
that's that's God's problem. You
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
So
That's exactly right. That's exactly right, Raghu, and really profound in that, right? And then not for nothing, biblically, for me, we're called to pray for and to love our enemies and to pray for our leaders, right, in government and to pray for, and so like for me, it resonates because it's one of those things where we are all human beings. And going back to that notion around what you said, like if we all don't make it, none of us make it. I'm paraphrasing. I just think, going back to this idea, we're clearly living in a moment where fear is shaping behavior. Fear in communities, fear in institutions, fear in
mm,
how people see one another.
yeah,
And I would say what I'm mindful of is this, when fear goes unexamined, it hardens people, it narrows empathy and increases the likelihood of harm, whether through policy, posture, or personal action. And so, Faith Over Fear, this book
mm,
again, isn't
mm,
really about reacting to any one headline. It's about forming ourselves so we don't become driven by fear when moments are charged.
yeah,
And I think that, scripture reminds us that fear is a poor decision maker. Faith doesn't, again, deny complexity, reality, or pain, but it does insist on dignity, right?
mm,
Some measure of restraint and humanity, even when emotions are high. And
mm,
that's why I think this moment matters because it's testing who we're becoming, not just what we believe. and how we respond when the pressure is on. And I think
Exactly.
faith really gives us the capacity to pause, to see people clearly, and to choose courage without abandoning compassion, I think.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Uh,
Yeah.
and the last thing I just want to mention before we go, uh, another thing that just bounced off the
Hmm.
page to me,
Yeah.
the price of holding on and the promise of letting go. That
Mm.
I think is so critical to our lives in every aspect because, how much we want to control and hold on. And,
Yeah.
I had a mentor, we had a mentor in India who was with this Neem Karoli Baba for
Hmm.
decades and decades. And he was, there used to be a comic strip called Mr. Natural in my day in the 70s, right?
Hmm.
And he was like he'd walk around town and he was the town guru and mentor to everybody, that kind of thing. This man was like that. He used to
Mm.
come to me and so the famous thing that he'd say to all of us, and he'd speak to us, my boy, if you think you are doing this, you are lost. If this is all coming only from your ego point of view,
Hmm.
then you have a tough road ahead of you. That you
Yeah.
have no uh, there's no swimming in the depth of who we really are if you walk around thinking that all you want to do is control your life.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's the promise of letting go.
That is. That is. It's one of the most important discernment questions in life, and I've learned you can't answer it emotionally. You really have to answer it honestly.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that sometimes letting go isn't quitting. It's graduating.
Yeah,
And
no, it's not quitting at all.
yeah,
It's
yeah. And
releasing, the attachment to the way you think it should be. It's releasing the things inside us that
hmm
set up the defenses. We're
yeah,
going to defend. We're putting a fence up there, and you can't
yeah,
see through it, and we're going to be okay. That kind of thing, which we all have and we all go through. It's human.
yeah, yeah.
It's
And
human.
speaking of Pastor Furtick, to end on this, on holding on and letting go, he said it this way: you might miss today's miracle trying to hold on to yesterday's blessing,
Hmm.
right?
Right.
And so,
That's like
I,
"Be Here Now," which is
that's
Ram
right.
Dass's most famous thing.
Yeah, yeah, be here now. And so that's why I'm really, really encouraged, not just by this conversation, but I know to every viewer and listener, I know this book is going to really add value and help them get clarity on all of this stuff for millions of people. And I just, my hope and prayer is that your viewers and listeners make sure that they're one of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, Listen, your offering here uh, is very critical because it's coming from a point of view of your experience
Mm.
in life and the things. Look where you got guided to the
Yeah.
NFL and the White House, for Christ's sake.
Yeah.
Just
Who
it's
would have
just
thought,
amazing,
Raghu? Who
just
would have thought?
amazing.
Into the Mindrolling podcast. Come
Yeah.
on now. Got to give you props here.
Yeah. Oh God, so great to meet you, man.
Yeah. Well,
Really.
pleasure is all mine. I mean that. Proud of you and your leadership and stewardship of this platform. And just keep going and stay the course. Stay the course.
I say the same to you. The
Thanks.
same to you, Michael.
Thank
So
you.
everybody, go to BeHereNowNetwork.com/mindrolling, and you'll see certainly the link. Michael, you could maybe send us a link to the book, and
Hmm.
then links to social and ways people can interact with you or in any way.
Absolutely.
And we'll put that up in the show notes. And everybody, will see you next time on
Next
Mindrolling.
time.
And thanks, Michael.
Thank you, Raghu. Take care.